Okay, so it's time to add some rational numbers. In other words, decimals, fractions, those kind of things. Alright, remember when we had the same signs and we added -3 plus -9 and we ended up with a lot of negatives? Matter of fact, we ended up with 12 of them. But when we had different signs, that was when we drew that charge model. We had 6 positives and 2 negatives, so we ended up subtracting and we ended up with 4, and it was positive because there were more positives than there were negatives. How about 4 plus -8? Well, in this case there were more negatives, so we ended up with -4 because there were 4 more negatives than there were positives. So just a few hints as we're going along. Don't forget to find common denominators, change mixed numbers to improper fractions, and don't forget to annex a 0 when you need to make the columns even with the decimals. So we have the same signs here. So what's that mean we're going to do? We have some negatives plus some more negatives. We end up with lots of negatives. Okay, so we're going to do that. The first thing we need to do is come up with a common denominator. So right now I'm just going to ignore the signs. Because they're the same, I'm going to add these two numbers. 4/5 and 1/3. What's the common denominator? By now you should already know that's 15. And if you don't remember how to do that, I counted by 3s and I counted by 5s until they had 1 in common. Okay, 5 times 3 is 15, 4 times 3 is 12. 3 times 5 is 15, 1 times 5 is 5. So I simply add those two together and I have -17 over 15. Is that the answer? No, because I know my answer is negative. Because I had some negatives and I added some more negatives to them, my answer is definitely negative. And -17 over 15 will work. Okay, how about this one? We still have the same signs. So if we have the same signs, we can add their absolute values. So I have 4.5 and 2.75. Oh look, there's an empty spot, so I'm going to annex a 0. Okay? Now 0 plus 5 is 5. 5 plus 7 is 12. Carry my 1. 6, 7. So 7.25, and it will be negative. Because a negative plus a negative equals a negative. Now we have some different signs. And what did we have to do when it was different? We had to find the difference. That's right. Now I've got a couple of, well, those look like mixed numbers. So first thing I'm going to do is change my mixed numbers to improper fractions. So 4 times 3 is 12, plus the one on top is 13. So I have -13/4. And then I have 15, 16, 17 thirds. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to subtract those two. And the way I want to do that is to find a common denominator. So I have 13/4 and I have 17 thirds. So let's see, what's my common denominator? 12. How did I get that? Well, I counted by 4s, and then I counted by 3s, and 12 was the first one they had in common. 4 times 3 is 12. 13 times 3 is 39. 3 times 4 is 12. 17 times 4 is 68. So I'm supposed to be subtracting their absolute values. How will I do this? Well, I'm going to do 68 over 12 minus 39 over 12. And what's 68 minus 39? Well, I'm going to have to carry my 1. Get a 9 there, and 5 minus 3 is 2. So I get 29/12. Now the question is it positive or negative? Well, this number goes with the positives, and this one goes with the negatives. Which one had a greater absolute value? Definitely this one. So my answer will be positive because that number was positive. Now if you're getting a little confused, you want to work one of these or two of these with your teacher. Now, let's talk about some decimals. These two decimals, well, they're different. they have different signs, so we have to find the difference. Now it's pretty easy to see which one has the greater absolute value. You've got 6.48 and you've got 2.5. So I'm going to put the 6.48 on top, and I'm going to subtract the 2.5 from it. Going to have to do a little borrowing, and I get 3.98. Is it positive or negative? Well, it's going to be positive because there are more positives than there are negatives. So that's just a little bit on adding rational numbers. Basically, you just have to combine what you learned from Chapter 1 with what you learned in about 4th or 5th grade.